Hello, and welcome back to the Long Distance Love Bombs podcast. I am your host, Dr. Jeremy Goldberg. My guest today is the one and only Duey Freeman. I'm so excited to share this conversation with you. Duey is a man that I hold in tremendous regard. He is just a dude. For those of you that don't know him, he is a sought-after teacher. He is a licensed therapist with like 60 to 80,000 contact hours with clients, working with them directly. He is an equine professional. He has taught at colleges for more than 30 years. He founded the Gestalt Equine Institute and the Gestalt Institute of the Rockies. He supervises therapists and graduate students. He is launching his own Art of Instinct and Intuition Mastermind, where if you are a coach or therapist or wellness professional, you can work with him directly. That's a brand new thing that he has never offered before. So I've included a link to that in the show notes. What else do you need to know about Duey? He's kind of like a Yoda figure. He's a very wise man. And two of my very best friends, Traver Boehm and Connor Beaton, who are themselves world-renowned teachers of men and leaders of men and doing men's work, they collaborate with Duey at a couple different live in-person events. I really encourage you, if you are a dude, to get to one of those. It will change your life. It will transform you. It will improve your relationships. They are very powerful. And Duey is one of the best practitioners on the planet. He has been described as the therapy world's best kept secret. And I am honored and humbled to know him. Like, I have his phone number. I can text him. That feels good. And Dewey's just one of the good ones. Additionally, he's developed his own practical attachment theory and human development theory that we will go through in a little bit of a superficial level, but I'm hoping to have Dewey back to really dive into that. It's a very practical, pragmatic way to understand your wounds, why you are the way you are, and what you can do about them. It's very grounded in the ideas of safety and power and influence and contact. Oh, it's so good. Anyway, Duey Freeman is the man. He was also one of my favorite people to follow on Instagram for about 2 years because he only had one photo, one post up, and it was like of a horse, and that was it. So Dewey's kind of the guy. He's underground. He's a little bit not well known, but amongst the people who you probably follow on the internet, he is very highly regarded and he is very respected also. At least in my friend group, which I'm obviously biased, but they're good dudes. Okay, without further ado, you can check out this conversation with Duey Freeman. Make sure to follow him on Instagram. You can check out the initiation work that he does with Traver Boehm and Connor Beaton. And get a pen and paper out because there are some absolute bombs in this one. All right, Duey Freeman. I think I've clicked all the buttons, but it's good to see you. Welcome to the podcast. I'm glad we can make this happen.
Great to see you. I'm glad we finally connected. We've been trying to do this for a while.
Yeah, man. I was going to start with a very brief story about the moment that I knew that I really liked you. Because it's
okay. That's a great story. Yeah. I've not heard about this.
No, I'm springing this on you. We just caught up for about half an hour, but I'm saving this one for the start. And I remember the word on the street was that you were this great dude and this really wise fella. And I met you at our mutual friend Traver Boehm's initiation retreat. And I remember I was talking to you about therapy, and you were talking about something that you had worked on or worked through, and you said about Freud, that guy just made a bunch of shit up, and I have more hours working with people than he does. So why can't I make up a bunch of shit too? And I was like, I like this guy. That is an interesting way to view it. But
I said that.
Yeah. And I did the math, Dewey. You on your website said 60,000 hours of contact hours with clients. And that is 6.5 years that you've spent of your life in session
Oh,
with people?
I actually have not put it together that way, but yes. And actually, it's probably a little more than 60 by now. It's probably closer to 70,000
But
between teaching but that's a long time. That's true.
okay, so you're a grizzled veteran of the therapy space. For those listening that have no idea who you are, how do you describe yourself? Like who's Dewey Freeman?
Oh, you're putting me on the spot here. Well, actually, I'm the guy that makes a bunch of shit up. Um, I sort of, to give a bit of context, I started working in 1970 with Outward Bound, and have been working with people, families, kids, adults, couples since then, in one way or another, in various settings. Outward Bound, wilderness therapy programs, therapist in a school, principal of a school for a few years. Been in private practice since the late 70s, early 80s. Also, I've been a college professor for 34 years at various universities, as well as having started two Gestalt therapy institutes, one called Gestalt Institute of the Rockies, which I no longer run. A former friend and partner runs that. I'm still running the Gestalt Equine Institute of the Rockies. I'm no longer teaching at a university. I retired from there, from Naropa University. I was at Naropa University for 31 years. I also taught at University of Northern Colorado and for a number of years, and another smaller school called Boulder College. So I would say I'm a teacher at this point. I'm a mentor. I still have a private practice. I do. I'm working with two different men's groups, which I absolutely love. And one of the main things I put together over the last number of years is a way to work with land-based, nature-based, and equine-based work. Doing a lot with horses, with therapeutic work with horses as my partners. And it's true. It's actually true. I think my exact quote is, I've had more client hours than Freud or Jung, and they made shit up, so I might as well do that too. And that has been a thing that I have done. And I don't mean make shit up like just out of the blue. What I do mean is I see in a number of incidences, I have seen systems that are partially formed and either need further formation, or I have seen systems that I just don't think work. And I've tried to shift some of those around so that they work better for people trying to grow and change in their lives.
Just to clarify, when you say systems there, you mean ways of doing psychotherapy?
Yeah, ways of doing psychotherapy, ways of trying to live in the world, ways of even being with horses, if there are any horse people in this audience. Ways of creating contact, ways of doing relationship. One of the things I've done that I developed through my teaching over the years is I put together a developmental model and a model of attachment that are usable. There are a lot of theories out there that are actually pretty decent, but nobody can remember them. So when they're in the middle of working with somebody, what they've learned is over here. There hasn't been a good way to bring a lot of that knowledge into the therapeutic work that people do, whether it's a person's a therapist, whether they're a coach, whether they're a mentor. People learn, for instance, all the stages of development that Erickson or Freud put out, but nobody remembers what they are, or exactly what they mean. So they're not able to integrate it into their work. So those are the kinds of things I've done. I also have taken horsemanship and therapy and put those together in a way that I don't think other people have. And basically everything I do, I try to make it relational. That's the underlying piece that I try to really hold, is that when we struggle, whether it's attachment issues or issues in relationships, we almost all of our injuries come in relationship. And the only way to get through those is through being in relationship. So all the work I do is the foundation of everything I do is relational.
I'm going to ask a very basic question, but I'm curious for your response. And it's simply like, what is therapy to you? And maybe you could lead that into the work you do with horses also, but you hear the word all over the place, thrown around. It kind of has a bad rap in some circles, and it has been pedestaled in others. But at its core,
therapy.
Yeah, just therapy in general. Like, how do you see it? What does it mean? Why does it matter?
Got it. So the foundational word therapy means to heal. That's what the word therapy means. Early on in the therapeutic world, healing literally was, and therapeutic healing was based on a medical model, that we're ill and that we need to come out of some emotional or psychological disease to heal. That's not what therapy means to me. My underlying belief is that we do not walk through the world. How do I want to say this? Most therapy is based on pathology. And most therapy is based on some level of pathological diagnosis. Like, I mean, even a lot of people hear about PTSD, but there are tons of other diagnoses out there. There's, there's borderline, there's narcissist, there's just a lot of people will talk about a neurosis. A lot of people will talk about some sort of a dysfunction. And that's not what I look at. That's not how I look at things. In fact, I mean, I know how to diagnose. I know what the DSM is. I know how to walk through all of those kinds of diagnoses. But almost all of those diagnoses end up with the word disorder at the end of them, like narcissistic personality disorder, by borderline personality disorder, blah, blah, blah. Even PTSD is post-traumatic stress disorder. I don't look at things like that. Here's how I look at things. We are born with the ability to attach, and the underlying building blocks of all attachment is what I call contact, the ability to make contact. Everything that I look at is, what do we do in our process between ourselves and another? What do we do that helps promote contact, and what do we do that inhibits contact? When we do something to inhibit contact, many people will say, well, we inhibit contact as a defense, or we inhibit contact as a disorder. We inhibit contact as some level of a dysfunction. And that's not how I look at it. A lot of people will talk about resistance in therapy, and even coaches and therapists will talk about resistance. I don't think there is such thing as resistance. So I'm just going to go off on a little tangent here. When a therapist or a coach says, "Oh, my client's resistant," what they're really doing, from my view, is blaming their client on their lack of ability. So if I say, well, Jeremy, you're being resistant, what I'm really saying is, I don't know what to do with you. So what I'm doing is blaming my client. If I do that, I'm blaming my client for my inability or my lack of knowledge. The way I see, if somebody is working with the idea of not making contact or of inhibiting contact most of the time, in fact, I'd venture to say that really all the time, what they're doing is protecting themselves from something. So instead of saying that somebody's resistant or someone has a disorder or somebody has a dysfunction, my underlying question is, what are you protecting yourself from? And what can I do to help you do that? What has happened in your life that you need protection? And one of them, if you think about it, if I'm here and my client is here and I say, well, you're being resistant or you have a disorder, it literally sets up an oppositional process between two people. If I say, what do you need to be protected from? What I'm actually doing is coming over and standing next to you and supporting you in your process. And that's the only way that I know of to help people move through that protection, so that they actually have a choice on whether or not they're going to make contact or whether they're not going to make contact. Ultimately, in my world, what health is the ability to make that choice. So,
health being, the ability to initiate or push away contact?
The ability to make choice in whatever we do. Mm-hmm. And the building block of all choice, and the building block of all relationship is contact. And I can walk through a little piece of that in a minute if you would like me to do that. But what I'm talking about ultimately is what health is, which is, going back to your question about therapy, is healing. I mean, that's what the word meant initially. What we're really looking at, what I really look at, is, do we have choice on what we want to do, when we want to do it, and how we want to do it? If we can make those choices, then we're in pretty good shape usually.
And is it an oversimplification to suggest that the areas where we don't have choices are the things that we need to illuminate or get guidance in working through those?
You bet.
Okay.
Yeah. And particularly choice around contact, choice around how we are in relationship, choice around whether we want to judge or not judge, choice around who we want to be in relationship with, choice around what we want to do with whomever we want to do it with, all of those kind of things.
So it's almost as if your maybe I'm phrasing this wrong, but your view of therapy is to facilitate agency. Is that fair?
Yeah. To facilitate the ability, yes. Ultimately, yes. But it's actually to facilitate the choice to be able to make contact when we want to make contact and not make contact when we choose not to, whether that contact be with ourselves or whether that contact be with another being.
Okay.
That's ultimately what I'm going for in life.
And then how do horses help that process? And I must caveat that I grew up in LA, but I've been watching a lot of Yellowstone, which is a terribly written, overdramatic show where there's lots of horses and I don't see a lot of therapy there.
You mean you don't think that Beth in Yellowstone is the highest level of therapeutic process that can happen? Is that what you're telling me?
I would love to see a spin-off where Duey Freeman enters the scene. Works his magic in Yellowstone. But truly, so you my experience with horses is they're big and they're beautiful and they seem to look into my soul when I'm around them, and part of me is scared by all of that. And Perfect. So how do you utilize horses? What is equine therapy?
Okay. So here's an interesting piece. When you said the horse seems to look into your soul and you're terrified of all of that, you in that given moment, you get to make the choice of whether you want to make contact with that other being or not. If you can, and you get to make either choice you want. It's like, oh, I really want to open myself up here, or gee, I think I'm going to go get a latte somewhere. As long as it's truly a choice versus a reaction, because there's a really big difference between choice and reaction, then either one, you can go for either one. So let me talk about horses a little bit. A little bit different than Yellowstone. However, the one thing I will say is many of the time, because I've watched Yellowstone also, there's some stuff in there around horses that's not cool. But if you'll notice, they actually work with their horses very differently than they do with each other. So let me wrap around here to horses a little bit. And let me give a little bit more of a background. Are you open to that? Just
please.
So the work that I do, and in almost all of the work that I do, is based in Gestalt therapy. So let me give a definition of that. Now, what I'm going to say is my definition of Gestalt therapy is different than most. This is where I get to make shit up because I've done it for a while. Gestalt therapy is the exploration of our experience in and of relationship while in relationship. That's what therapy is to me. So let me say it again. It's the exploration of our experience, not what we think. Sometimes what we think is a part of our experience, but it's not our experience. When we think something, we can stop having an experience. It's actually one of the ways that we stop our own process of experience. So it's the exploration of our experience in relationship and of relationship while in relationship. So that's piece number one. Does that make sense to you?
Mm.
So that gives a little bit maybe fuller piece of what therapy is. The other piece I want to bring in here is the concept of I thou. Have you heard of that concept?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. There's a dude named Martin Buber in the late 1800s that came up with the concept of I thou, as opposed to I it. And what I thou means is that I'm having an experience and my experience is full and as rich as I know how to make it, and that you or any other being is also having an experience. And that your experience is just as valid as my experience. Quick side story. This is a true story. I'd gone out to feed my horses one morning. It was one of the late spring storms where it snowed an inch or two overnight. The morning sun rose. It was in this crystal clear blue sky, snow everywhere, snow on the tree, the little branches of the trees. And I fed my horses and I walked up to the edge of the paddock and a herd of elk was coming through. And I walked out and a cow elk with her baby stood maybe 22 to 25 feet from me. She stood and looked at me, and I looked back at her for probably 8 to 10 minutes. What I became incredibly aware of was that she was having just as much of an experience of her, of me and the surroundings as I was having of her. And I mean, it was one of those experiences where I was like shaking inside going, this elk is like looking at me like crazy. And so I started making all kinds of shit up like I do. And it's like, my little story was, she's going, what's this like sort of ugly being doing over there? And this thing only has 2 legs and he or she's really slow. But it was like, but I could just tell it was like this soul connection between her and I. And then her little baby walked up between us and then they walked away. So I could have said, oh, there's that thing that's a elk, or I could go, oh, there's a being that's having an experience of me. So instead of objectifying her, I actually experienced her as another being that's having an experience of me. Then there's an energetic piece that happens between us that I call we. And so there's I, thou, and then when we're in relationship, there's a we. So Buber talked a lot about I, thou. I sort of added the we part in there. And I'll talk about that more later. But it's that we, it's that what happens between us that creates the we. And that's the relational part that I'm going to talk about. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
A little bit what I'm talking about here.
Yeah.
So when we are objectifying the other, we go into a whole piece of it's I, it instead of I, thou. And that's where all of the I, it's, that's the core of all the racism. It's the core of all of the sexism. It's the core of all of the ageism. It's the core of all of those things. And when we actually go to war, we objectify whomever is on the other side, because we have to do that to be able to kill them, basically. So, which interestingly enough, and this is another aside, which is the basis of all the PTSD stuff that happens for people who've had to go to war. So going back to I, thou.
Wait, hang on. Sorry. Do you mind please expanding on that? So the basis of the PTSD is that they have they've turned an I, thou into an I, it? or
Well,
vice
here's what I see happen. When we objectify the other, and we do that, like whether it's uh, like gangs do that to other gangs, countries do that to other countries. But what happens is that we go in and we objectify another country and say all the people in another country. And we have to do that because we're killing and we end up killing people from that other country. And to do that, we objectify them. We make up names for them. We make up, like in World War II, it was the Japs, or, I don't even remember all the names for the Germans where we were fighting, but we objectify them. But then after the war is over, or after we leave that, because we're designed to be in relationship, we stop objectifying. And then we go, oh my God, I just killed another person, versus staying with that objectification. And then that's what causes the trauma of what we've seen. We just blew that kid's head off. We just killed that woman, that mother of that kid. We just killed the father of a family, instead of just seeing them as an object that we're fighting. So it's moving from that externalized I-it process into an internalized I-thou process that creates the trauma. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That same process, that same thing happens in domestic violence. It happens if we get in fights with other people. It happens. I just saw on Instagram, I think it was this morning or last night, I forget, of a fight that happened at a football game from over the weekend, where two people were beating each other up over the game. It's like, seriously. So anyway, going back to this whole piece with I thou, and then I thou we, I'm going to put a little pause on that and just hold, if you would, please hold that there. So now I'm going to switch to talking about horses directly. Horses in the wild are prey animals. And what that means is that they are the ones that get eaten by the lions and tigers and bears. Oh my. Horses they're not predators. They don't eat meat. They're the ones who actually get chased by mountain lions, by bear, by whatever. The way that they stay safe is through relationship. Like a horse out all by itself can be pretty vulnerable. A horse in a herd is pretty safe. Horses, as you pointed out, are big, they're fast, they're strong. They do know how to protect themselves, but still they're prey. So they have that mentality. When we have experienced trauma in our lives, when we feel like we are objectified by the other, when we feel like we've been harmed by another, we end up feeling like we're prey. Does that make sense? So many people who have experienced, for instance, childhood abuse, sexual assault, domestic violence, abandonment, literally walk through the world feeling two things. One, that they're prey, and two, that they've been objectified, because they have. And what we want in the world are two things. We want to know if we're safe, and we want to know where we belong, which is exactly what horses want. So if we walk in and connect with a horse and we're not a predator, they don't have to be prey. if we learn how to be in relationship without being predators, we don't have to either feel as if we're prey or have other people feel as if they're prey. So that's the beginning of the work. And why horses is, one, they're big. Two, they're incredibly powerful. Three, they know how to relate to another being that feels like they're prey. And they know how to not be a predator, which is exactly, if we have experienced being preyed upon, we need to be able to be around another being that's not a predator. Does that make sense so far?
Yeah. And is it a fair assumption that there's just no part of the horse that has that energy? Like, has it been evolved out of them? So there's this kind of purity there?
There's a purity. They will protect, but they don't prey on you.
Gotcha.
If they get hurt, if they get threatened, they'll protect themselves. But if they don't need to protect themselves, they do not turn into prey. They do not stalk anybody. A horse doesn't stalk anybody.
Yeah. No, I'm loving this. That's a really interesting perspective. Okay.
So, other questions, or do you want me to go on? Please ask. Please, because asking is really good.
I'll interrupt when I feel called, but I'm enjoying this kind of narrative arc of.
Okay.
I think it's really interesting to consider that idea that human beings are walking around feeling like prey because they have been directly in contact with a predator. That's interesting to me. I hadn't considered it.
Yeah. Well, think about this, and let me just ask you, do you know any women in your life that you're close to? I'm not talking just about your partner. I'm talking about, sisters, mothers, really good friends. Like I have, I don't know, dozens of friends who are women. And it's like all of them have said that they've felt invaded. They felt glared at. They have felt touched inappropriately. They have felt, and I mean, some have been assaulted, either sexually or physically. And it's like women who have experienced that oftentimes walk around the world feeling as if they're prey. Men who have been beat up, who have been, I don't know how many men that I talk to as adult men who say, I can't tell you, I got teased, I got bullied, I got beat up in junior high, I was never picked for a team. It's like we walk around feeling like we're prey oftentimes. And we walk into a room and go, who's going to pick on me? Who's going to beat me up? Who's bigger than me? Who's stronger than me? Who's going to fuck with me? I mean, all of those kinds of things. I mean, have you ever experienced that?
I mean, I'm 5'7", Dewey. So yeah, I've definitely had my encounters with both sexes, but and certainly with women. Every woman that I've had a meaningful relationship with has had direct, unwanted, unsolicited advances from men. Full stop. And I think it's a really powerful reframe, because other ways that I've heard that would be cautious, aware of your surroundings, very present, discerning about who you meet and how you act in the world. But to frame it as feeling like prey is an accurate description that takes it to an entirely different kind of place.
Yeah. And so if a person comes to me, whether they've been picked on in junior high school or whether they had their ass grabbed as they walk through a bar, that feeling inside is really pretty horrible. And it's one thing to say, oh yeah, you're just hyper aware, or you're this or you're that, or you need to be aware of your surroundings. And it's another thing to really say, oh, You have to walk through the world as if they're predators. That's a big deal.
Mm.
And it's accurate. It's more accurate. And when we're in that, when there's a prey predator process, there's no we. So that's why I started off with the I, thou, we. When there's a prey predator process, there's no we. Does that make sense? So there's no relationship.
Yes. And I think, is that because the relationship is a confrontation or a winner take all or a power hierarchy
Yeah.
of some kind?
Mm-hmm. And if someone's a predator, they have to objectify the prey. So it's an I-it relationship versus an I-thou relationship.
Sure.
Okay. So if we can go in and be part of the herd, we end up feeling pretty safe. So here's the other really cool thing. There's a whole bunch of cool things there. So like you said, horses are big. I have 3. 2 of them are full size. One's a racing quarter horse, one's a cow quarter horse, and one's a little Welsh mountain pony. The 2 quarter horses are around 1,100, 1,200 pounds. The pony's around 600 pounds. So I'm 6'1"-ish, 195 on a good day, 200 on a bad day. They still outweigh me by 6 times. So size matters here. This is one of the places where size actually matters. Are you familiar with heart math? Are you familiar with that concept?
I have heard of it and read about it, but if you could make any points that you'd like, that would be
Okay.
welcome.
So heart math it's more than this, but the basics of heart math is that people were smart enough to figure out how to measure our electromagnetic energy that radiates from our bodies. So if anybody has had the experience where you just walk up close to somebody and you go, oh, wow, I can feel that person. That's what it is. So the reason I say size matters is because the larger the mass, the more energy that comes off of that. So let's say you're 5'7" and what?
I mean, 155?
Okay, so I'm like 6-ish and 195. So if we stand next to each other, just because I'm slightly bigger than you are, I'm going to have a little bit more electromagnetic energy coming off of me. Doesn't mean I'm better or worse. It just means more energy. That's just all it means. So a horse, if you and I both stood next to a horse, and that horse is 1,200 pounds, their resting heart rate is 38. Our resting heart rate's about 70. Their respiratory rate is about 2/3 of what ours is per minute. We're 18-ish per minute. On average, horses are around 12. Their body temperature is about the same as ours. But if a horse is standing next to us and they're calm, we're going to move into that energetic field and our heart rate's going to slow down. Our respiratory rate's going to slow down. And I cannot tell you how many people come and stand by one of my horses and go, I've always been afraid of horses, but this is so nice just to stand here. I don't know why I feel so calm right now, but I feel so good. Because what we're doing is we're going into that energetic field that is moving, that's one way bigger than ours and moving at a much slower pace than ours. Versus resting respiratory heart rate is between 36 and 40 per minute.
So is that individual essentially borrowing the nervous system of the horse?
That's exactly what they're doing. And that's a whole lot of what therapy is about. When I work with people, I let people borrow my nervous system to settle them. So that horse is literally beginning to regulate their nervous system. So if someone's prey or feeling like that and their nervous system settles, what happens is they don't have to feel like prey anymore. They go, oh, this feels so good. So it's an interesting thing. Sometimes what I'll do is just have people groom my horses. And they go, this feels so good. I just love this. Can I come back? Can I clean their feet? Can I? And it's like, yeah, you can. And in that moment, I'm not being Mr. Wonderful Therapist. All I'm doing is working, and I have worked with my horses, so they are really calm. They are really good around people, around hundreds of people all the time. And they know that they're safe, so they don't have to be prey. So people who are with my horses don't have to be prey either. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that's one of the reasons that I work with horses. Another reason that I work with horses is because many people who have struggled with attachment, for instance, they move into that nervous system. What would be the right word for it? Space. And in that process, they go, oh, okay, I'm safe. From that place, they can begin to attach. They can begin to feel like it's okay to make contact with another being. Here's a couple cool things about that. Much of our attachment process takes place in utero. We actually begin attaching in utero. And you and I had this wonderful part of our discussion right before we got online about parenting and fatherhood. Well, right after a child is born, 90% of the time, and actually 100% of the time at first, the only way that child gets moved is by us carrying them. I mean, there is a place where they start crawling, and then first they scooch, then they crawl, then they walk. And there's that process that happens. But early on, both in utero and early on in life, we're carrying our children. When we carry them and move them, there's three things in attachment that need to happen. One is food, one is touch, and one is movement. Well, we feed them while we're carrying them, we're rocking them while we're carrying them, and we're touching them while we're carrying them. In the work of helping somebody work with their own attachment processes, the only way that I know how ethically to allow somebody to be held and carried is on the back of a horse. So it's like, I can't put somebody on my lap and rock them and a lot of the people I work with are men who are bigger than me. So it's like, here's this man that's 260 pounds. I'm not going to put that person on my lap and rock them, but I can put them on a horse and have them carried. And so many times I'll just sit somebody on a horse and all kinds of stuff will come up. They can lay on a horse, they can sit on a horse, and people get on a horse and just tears start coming and they start going, I don't know why I'm crying. This feels so good. And it's like, it's because they're getting what they need to get that there's no other way to get it. And they probably didn't get it in infancy. That makes sense?
Yeah. And then being on the horse or near the horse gives them sort of permission or an invitation to move part of themselves out of the way, and the calmness and what needs to come up can come out.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
And there's a couple of other things that fit in here. And for you and for everybody who ends up listening to this, I'm doing, like, I could talk for 10 hours on this. So I'm giving you the quick and dirty here. Here's the other part. When we have and other reasons I work with horses. When we have for instance, been sexually assaulted, both men and women. And I've worked with both men and women who've been sexually assaulted pretty violently. Most of the time, they don't want to be touched. They don't want the inside of their thighs touched. They don't want their pelvises touched. They don't want their genitals touched. And it's like, just leave me alone. Stay away from me, which is appropriate. That's that protection piece that I was talking about 45 minutes ago. Somebody can sit on a horse and be touched in an incredibly safe way. And I have put people on a horse, and it's the first time another being has touched the inside of their thighs, their pelvises, their genitals, maybe for years. And it's the beginning. So both of the things I'm talking about are working with horses to help bridge that gap between stay away from me, but I really do want to be in a relationship. It's sort of to help bridge that gap. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So let me throw in one other piece. And again, this is part of I'm going pretty fast here. A horse's pelvis anatomically is exactly the same as a human pelvis, and even more so with it's exactly the same as a woman's pelvis. And if you watch a horse walk, and I mean, when I say this, I always preface this and that I'm saying this in the most respectful way. If you watch a horse walk and you watch a pregnant woman walk from behind, they look the same. It's the exact same movement. The exact same movement. And so when we have had struggles with attachment, we've had struggles with trauma, which, interestingly enough, anytime we have trauma, we go back to attachment with stuff. I can put somebody on a horse and move them, and they'll get that same internalized sensation that they got in utero. It's actually the closest replication that can be made to somebody being in utero. So not only do we get touched, we get to be held, and we get to be moved the same way we got moved in utero. Which, what that does is it opens up energetically to, one, express what we need to express, and to begin healing and get an experience that's incredibly positive. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And then when that's all happening, you kind of put on your therapist hat and guide them through the trauma.
Yeah, my whole process, my whole job is to help support their process. And however that needs to be happening. So here's the other piece then that feeds into this. A huge part of this work is learning how to create an opening for both a horse to walk into and a person to walk into. And what I mean is an energetic opening. Horses create openings naturally. That's what they do. But we need to learn how to do that. And we can only do that if we're not being predators, if we let go of all of our predatorial processes. So if you could imagine a horse, a person on a horse, and me there, my job is to actually create an opening for both a horse and a person, to have that be a safe space for them to be. And I will guide, I will support, I will facilitate a person's process in that with whatever comes up, and helping them through whatever they need to go through in the process that they're in. And sometimes that is really, really intense, and sometimes that's real gentle and sweet. Sometimes that's just like, oh, it just feels good to be up here. And my job is to know enough about a person's process to help them through that, and to know enough about horses so that my horses are safe in that. Because here's the other piece that happens, is that many times all of the energy that a person is experiencing, actually when somebody, because I work with people's breaths, I work with their posture, et cetera, when they're on a horse, all of that energy actually goes down into the horse and goes down through the horse into the ground, or the horse expresses it some way. So I also have to watch what's going on with my horse. So that my horse isn't just taking on all of that traumatic energy and being traumatized by that energy. So I'm watching all of that happen at any given time and facilitating all that to happen at any given time.
Mm. Yeah, I was curious about that. If a person is having an emotional breakdown, or lots of tears or shouting or whatever is happening, how did the horses respond to that?
That's a really good question. And I have been doing this with horses for 23, maybe 24 years now. The deeper a person drops into their process, the more solid a horse gets. That I've seen that over and over and over and over. And people go, well, but if I'm yelling or screaming out, like what horses look for is congruency and authenticity. So if somebody is congruent, the horse is just fine. It's when somebody is incongruent that's when it feels like a predatorial process. So if you think about it, if a mountain lion is sneaking up on a horse, they're completely quiet and they're calm, but it's incongruent. It's like, I'm after you. But if we can be incongruent, if we can be in our congruency, is what I'm trying to say, or if we can be congruent, then a horse is just fine. And I've had people sob and cry and scream, and you name it, it's happened. And as long as the congruency is there, the horse is just fine. What does happen is after we're finished, I always do a thing where I allow my horses to do something to release the energy.
Shake it off, run around.
Literally shake it off, run around, buck and kick, roll, stomp their feet, fart. I mean, they literally do all of that. Mm-hmm. But I actually set that up. And a lot of times I'll do some energetic work to help them move the energy out. And you can see it happen.
Yeah. Yeah. Picture the horse just kind of looking at a person crying, and it's smaller than them, and they're having experience, and the horse is just like, yeah, whatever, cry. And there's that weird human thing just going through it.
Well, most of the time, horses actually really connect in. They'll actually turn and smell. I have seen somebody crying and sort of begin to, just because they're crying, they'll start, say, leaning over, and the horse will like move under them to hold them. Horses become very, very involved. So let me share a story with you. My place, I have on our property, we have our cabin that we live in. And then up above, we have it's about an acre-ish where our horses are. And there's another small cabin that we work in that is a therapy cabin. And the therapy cabin is at one end of our property and the barn's at the other, although it's open between the two. I was working with a client who, right outside the therapy cabin, all of my horses were about 100 yards away. And it was a piece of emotional work where this person I was just putting weight on this person's shoulders, and because this person just carries the weight of the world on their shoulders, and it was like just putting weight and letting them feel that, and where it was like, and part of what I was saying was let yourself push this weight off of you, let yourself move through this if you're able to. It was a little more sophisticated than that, but you get the picture. And this person was like, get off and pushing and just like, get away, get back, and and we had agreed that we would do this just so everyone in the audience knows I was not being abusive. And my back was to the barn, and my biggest horse, his name is Moondash, literally, I heard trotting behind me, literally came up, got between us, between me and the person I was working with, and stood there. Like, so there's person, horse, me. And it was like, whoa. He did that by himself. Nobody called him over. There was no cue for him to come over other than this person. He picked up that this person had some distress going on. And he came and stood between my client and me. And my question to my client was, what's it feel like to have a large male come and protect you? It was both. And then that led into all kinds of other pieces of work. So the horses get really engaged. They're not just standing there going, okay, this is weird. They get very engaged. Horses have survived because of relationship. So when we offer them relationship, they will step into that.
Damn. Do you ever daydream about doing brontosaurus therapy?
That'd be great, wouldn't it?
Those are big prey animals too, right?
I think they were prey. I don't know enough about brontosaurus to know.
Yeah.
I can make some shit up about them though.
But so, okay, I love all of this, man, and I respect this work tremendously, and I'm fascinated by it because I haven't had direct experience doing it. And I also would love for you to talk about attachment and your attachment model, because I think that is perhaps the final piece that you use
sort of pull this together
in your therapy, right? So like you get the horse, you get the person, you're guiding them through their process. And I think you're relying upon this model that you came up with despite Jung and Freud and the rest. the Freeman model of attachment.
Yeah, let me talk about.
Is that a fair place to take it, or is there other stuff?
No, that's a good place to take it.
Okay.
I don't know if we have time to throw that on here or not, and I don't know if I can. You know what?
You have to come back and do another session.
Yeah, why don't we make this agreement? Why don't I talk about it, but let's do another session where I actually can bring the graphics that I have on to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And then we can walk through that. So let me walk people through this quickly. In utero, well, I'm so tempted to see if we can pull this up. If I sent you that, well,
it's been a while, but maybe just a quick overview of what.
Yeah, let me just give you an overview, and
relates to safety,
and then we can if you're open to it, let's set up a time where we just dive into that and what happens in utero and what happens in the first year and a half of life, because that's a bigger thing. in utero, we are always getting food, touch, and movement. We're being fed through the umbilical cord. We're getting touched inside the uterus, and we're always being moved. We're being moved when our mother is breathing. We're being moved when our mother is walking. We're being moved all the time when she's sleeping. Later in life, food and nurturing become sort of a continuum. We still need food, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But we're also getting fed through being nurtured. Touch also, if we can sort of expand that into a continuum, it's touch expanded into contact. And contact is more than just touch. We can actually make contact with people energetically, spiritually, emotionally, etc. And then movement is another huge piece of that. And we still need movement, but movement is also gets expanded into emotion, which emotion is movement of energy through our body. So when energy moves through our body, like if anger comes up, for instance, or sadness, that's energy moving through our body. So when energy is moving through our body, we call that emotion. That's what we've done with that. When we want that or need that, in utero, we always have it, but in infancy, what we do is we cry. When we want food, touch, and movement, we will cry. We'll wiggle, we'll look cute. Sometimes we rage, sometimes we slobber, sometimes we just move around. Our caretakers then pick us up, they feed us, they rock us, they do everything they know how to meet our needs. And so basically what they do is they provide food, touch, and movement. The essential part of that is when they provide food, touch, and movement, they have to provide that in contact with presence for us. So if a mother is feeding or a father is feeding, it's like we need to make eye contact. We need to be present. We can't be like mother breastfeeding and on their phone looking, or a father giving a bottle and on his phone. We can't. It's like, I'm going to come back to that in a minute, but that actually creates problems when we do that. So we have to give food, touch, and movement in contact and relationship. When we do that, the cycle continues around, we as infants feel like the world's an okay place to be. And then we go back and want food, touch, and movement. So that's the cycle. That's a quick cycle. Pretty much every attachment theory in the world goes through some process, but the real underlying piece of attachment and what creates trust is going through a hard time and coming out okay. That's how we attach. So if you and I are out in the woods and one of us falls and sprains an ankle, and the other one helps us through that process, that's going through a hard time and coming out okay. If we get in a conflict, and then we resolve it, that's going through a hard time and coming out okay. But in this case, it's food, touch, and movement, and the need for that is what creates a crisis for the little baby. And then when we provide that in contact and relationship, we go through that hard time and we come out okay, and the world feels like okay. And we begin trusting the person providing that to us. That process, I did a study in the 90s with this, that process happens between 10 and 15 times an hour when a baby is awake. Yeah, a lot. And it can be
4 to 5 minutes, essentially.
Yes. And it can be as little as a baby waking up and going, and you reach over and touch their tummy and you rock them and you go, that's a whole cycle. Sometimes it's like they're really hungry, or sometimes they're teething, or sometimes their little tummy hurts, or those kinds of things. But the biggest piece is being able to provide food, touch, and movement in contact and relationship. Now, so that's just very briefly the cycle. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So now, if food, touch, and movement is provided, but it's not in contact and relationship, what will happen is that we attach to the food, touch, and movement itself versus the person that's providing the food, touch, and movement.
That doesn't seem like it has great knock-on effects.
That would be exactly correct. So, and that's actually the basis for addiction. Is so if I have an addiction, what I'm addicted to, let's say I'm addicted to alcohol, if that's the case, that's an attachment process, because that's soothing my food, touch, and movement needs. So, and that's why it's so important to give the food, touch, and movement in contact and relationship versus just the food, touch, and movement.
Sorry, Dewey, just to reiterate, the contact and relationship is an energetic presence, an emotional connection. It's not just, I'm holding my baby, I'm in contact while being on the phone, checking your email.
Exactly.
Right.
And sometimes what happens is that, let's say a mother is depressed, say postpartum depressions, or let's say there's 5 kids running around, or let's say there's not enough food in the house, or let's say all of those kind of things. And so a lot of times mothers get overwhelmed. So I'm not parent blaming on this. This is a really big deal. Sometimes people don't know how to be in contact and relationship. So it's not, and you're right. It's like being able to be in relationship and being present, being attuned. It's a totally an energetic process. Does that make sense?
It does. And in my personal experience, a sentence that I've heard that I'm sure that you're familiar with is, I can't feel you right now. And I'm
exactly.
I'm right next to you. I'm literally touching your hand. And it's like, you're not here. I can't feel you.
Yes. So so that's the place. If we learn how to create openings with our horses, for instance, we can create openings for other people. So it's like, how do I create an opening for somebody to step into and be available for contact? But you're right. It's like, well, I'm right here, but I can't feel you. But I'm right here, but I can't feel you. I mean, people even, even think about how many times people, even in my life, where I've been sexual with somebody, and it's like, my genitals are there, but not the rest of me. And, how do I bring all of my being to this? And how do I bring that presence and that attunement to every relationship that I have?
And that just becomes the noble aspiration, I suppose.
I think it's that process is a lifetime of learning. And some of us if we learn that as babies and we learn that in utero, we get a head start on the other people that have gone through struggles early on. I mean, in my case, my mother was diagnosed with tuberculosis when she was 5 months pregnant with me. I was born, I was whisked away. She was put in a sanitarium for 18 months. I didn't live with her until I was 18 months old. I had to work through a lot of stuff. And that's actually why, that's the basis of why I know so much about attachment, because I had to figure it out.
Yeah.
And do my own work with it.
I feel like Gabor Mate had a really similar upbringing. Are you familiar with his?
Oh, I know. Yeah, I know Gabor.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think if I'm not mistaken, his mom gave him away during the war in the first 18 months or 2 years
Yeah,
away
that's,
from her.
I think you're right. Hmm. And, and actually he lives in Vancouver, I think,
Yeah.
so yeah, there's a lot of stuff that goes on with that. That's really a pretty big deal.
Hmm.
And, and so there's a lot of stuff that happens early on, though. It's not because their parents are horrible human beings. It's because they don't know, or, I mean, they didn't get it, or sometimes they're sick. Sometimes there's too many kids. Who knows?
There's a favorite quote of mine by a guy called Tom Robbins, who's an author, writer. Um, and I'm curious for your take on it, but he says it's never too late to have a happy childhood.
Yeah. What books did he write? I know.
He wrote Half Asleep in Frog Pajamas and
Yeah. Yeah. And
Even Cowgirls Get the Blues.
yeah. Yeah.
He's a
No,
wild.
I think he's right. It's never too late to have that. It's never too late to, and maybe, I need to wrap up here in a minute, but it's like we can always work and go back and learn how to attach. We can always clean up our relationships. We can always learn how to create openings for other people. We can always learn how to make, I, thou, we relationships. We can always do those things. And I think there's many, many, many paths to this. And it's just that, I've, in my perspective, been fortunate enough to be able to do that with nature and with horses. And I still work on that. When I ride my horse, which I ride a lot, I mean, that's one of my happy places. I'm dropping energetically into the core of my horse to ride, where we're riding. I'm not riding my horse. We're riding. I don't get on my horse and go, okay, I'm going to trot my horse. I get on my horse and go, oh, we're going to trot. And so, and I'm in my mid 70s. So I'm still working on this. So yeah, it's never too late to have a happy childhood. I like that quote.
Yeah, I love that too. And you're like, kind of, from what I've been told about, you're kind of like the therapist they call for the serious cases and the intense stories, and that, like, this person really needs some Yoda style guidance. And I think for you to say that it's never too late to heal, that you can learn the things that you need to learn, I think is a really hopeful and optimistic way to perhaps wrap all of this up.
Yeah. And I believe that at my core. People ask me, and I do get people who have been to many, many other therapists or been to numbers of programs. And it's like, I don't know what to do. I've tried this, I've tried that. I don't think we're ever finished. And I believe very strongly that every minute of every day, we have the opportunity to learn and to grow and to move into that I, thou, we relationship that we're literally designed to be in from the minute we're conceived.
Maybe that's a good spot to end it. But Dewey, thanks for your time. Thanks for your knowledge.
Thank you so very much.
All the work you do, man. Just really glad I know you.
I'm incredibly honored to know you, and look forward to continuing to get to know you better than I do.
Yeah, I got to meet your horses one day, man.
You are more than welcome to come out, hang out on the side of the mountain with me.
Sounds great, brother.
All right. Thank you so much.
Duey Freeman is such a good Dude, so wise. I feel like just his little pinky toe has more knowledge and experience than most of us put together. Anyway, as mentioned in the intro, Dewey has a new Art of Instinct and Intuition mastermind that he is launching in February. That is a small, intimate container. You can work with him directly in person and online. I've included a link in the show notes. You can check that out. He also does work with Traver Boehm, with the Man Uncivilized group, leading initiation experiences. They've got one coming up in Austin, Texas in a couple months. And he does collaborations also with Connor Beaton of Man Talks. Both of those guys have been on the podcast and will be back again soon, I'm sure. Well, Connor definitely is because he's booked in. But anyway, in the show notes, you can find Dewey's Instagram. You can find his website. He's the best. He's the fucking best. Thank you for being here. Thanks for listening. Thanks for the support. Please do subscribe, leave a 5-star review, and send this one to anyone that you think would benefit from this conversation, aka everybody on the planet. That's it for me. I will talk to you soon. And yeah, keep smiling and keep breathing.